Assalamu alaikum, namaste, sat sri akal, shalom and good day. You are listening to Awaz Community Radio. And today we'll be talking about the big issue. Now, if you'd like to get in touch with us, our number is 839-9817. Just add in the 0161 because, of course, we're Manchester based. You can follow us on Facebook, type in Awaz Community Radio, or tweet us at Awaz Radio 122. You can email us awazcommunityradio@gmail.com or catch us on our website. It's www.awazcommunityradio.com. Thank you for listening to Awaz Community Radio with your host for today, Syra. Now, as I said, our guests today are from The Big Issue. Hi, Kevin and Josh.
Hello there.
Hi.
Thanks, guys, for coming in. Now, can you tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
I'm Kevin Gopal. I'm the editor of Big Issue North. Big Issue North is now in its 22nd year, I think, of being a street paper sold across the north of England. That's the northwest and Yorkshire and Humber. And it exists to help homeless people and those who otherwise struggle to earn an income to get on and earn some much valued income. They sell the magazine for £2.50. They've paid £1.25 for it, so they keep the resulting £1.25, and that's the business model of the magazine. Enables them to, as I say, not only earn much needed income, but also to gain through the self-esteem and the organisational skills and so on that come from really running what is essentially a small business for them.
Yeah, and I'm Josh. I work on the front line, and my title's a service coordinator. So I work day to day with the vendors, assisting them with any problems they might have or opportunities they wanted to pursue. We'll do referrals to other agencies so they can get housing advice or benefits advice. And really we're just there to sort of assist them to earn as much of an income as they can and try and move on with their lives if they can.
Great stuff. So can you guys tell our listeners a little bit more about how did the Big Issue begin? How did it start?
Big Issue North started as a supplement within the pages of the Big Issue, the London-based at the time magazine, set up by John Bird in the early 90s to address what was then a very visible problem of street homelessness. Very soon after, Big Issue North became an independent publication. I think we're in our 22nd year now, and that's the history of it. The street paper model exists all around the world, and it's a very effective way of giving people, as I say, income and something of the dignity of working.
For those listeners who have never bought a copy of The Big Issue, what's the content like?
Big Issue North is a weekly general interest magazine. The aim is to provide the vendors with a greater chance as possible of selling the magazine. So we aim at a very wide audience of people on the street. And that means hopefully a very lively mix of everything from arts and entertainment through to politics and current affairs and all points in between. So we carry news, we carry features, interviews, very strong what's on section, reviews and so on. So in the past few weeks, just for example, you've seen everybody from Mumford and Sons to Jeanette Winterson on the cover. You've seen in-depth investigations into controversial practice of FGM, where we've had some very powerful accounts from people who've been forced to endure that. We've been covering the controversial and perhaps little known trade deal TTIP, which is just beginning to emerge as a cause of political concern. That's the trade deal between EU and the US that's currently being negotiated. So almost everything's our territory really, and what we try to do is to reflect something of life in the north, because we are sold everywhere from obviously Manchester, but also through to Liverpool, up to the Scottish borders and across to Hull. So we do try and reflect something of life in the north, but we're also very keen not to be parochial. So you'll read a lot of international coverage in the magazine as well, and that's reports from Sri Lanka, that's reports from Kurdistan, and so on.
Fantastic. And is it a weekly or?
Weekly magazine,
weekly
yeah,
magazine.
40 pages, yep.
Great. Now, can I ask you guys, how did you guys get involved with the big issue? Where did you come from, and how did you find the big issue?
Initially I started working, doing sort of part-time hours at the office in Liverpool when I was at university over there. And I recognised it was doing a lot of good for people, in the community that I was living in. And I think it's quite an effective way of, like Kevin said, building people's self-esteem and trying to get them back into a position where they can engage with society much more effectively. So I moved on from doing sort of relief hours, as it were, in Liverpool to a full-time position in Manchester.
Great. And how about you, Kevin?
I've been a journalist for more years than I care to remember, really, mainly working around Manchester, and mainly in the field, not exclusive, but mainly in the field of business and politics and regional affairs, and came on board, I think, about 8 years ago to help Big Issue North as a freelancer initially. And then I just liked the job so much that I refused to leave.
That can't always be said about many jobs, really.
It's a very enjoyable job. It's without being too pious, being a journalist is a fascinating job because you can stick your nose into all sorts of into areas and you never get bored. But with that, obviously, comes quite a lot of responsibility as well. At a time when journalism's stock is not necessarily that high. And of course, we've got the responsibility of trying to produce a magazine that our vendors can sell. So, yeah, it's a great job, very enjoyable, but comes with quite a lot of responsibility too.
There must be a real sense of it being rewarding as well. Like you said, there's a lot of perception and stereotypes about journalists right now. But you must feel that it must be great to see the fruits of your labour, really.
Absolutely great. We have a small, very dedicated full-time staff. It's essentially in the editorial side, myself and a deputy editor. So we work with a big bank of very committed freelancers as well. And the process of commissioning an article, seeing it through to publication, and hopefully shedding light on, for example, little-known areas like the TTIP deal that I mentioned before. It's incredibly rewarding to see that we're helping people understand, helping shape the debate, helping open up the debate on controversial and important matters.
And for you, Josh, it must be really rewarding for you because you work directly with the vendors. Can I ask, what is it like working with the vendors, and what is it like to sell the magazine on the streets?
In terms of selling the magazine, it's tough. It can be difficult. I think one of the things that most vendors mention to us is the fact that a lot of people will ignore big issue sellers. And I think that can be one of the most difficult things, especially in terms of your self-esteem and the way, you're there doing a job, and it can be difficult. You feel like you should be getting some sort of respect from that, and sometimes people don't always, aren't always polite to each other on the street. So it's a tough job, and obviously sometimes that can try people's patience, or it can be difficult to kind of stay calm and polite. But most of our vendors seem to do quite a good job, and yeah, it's good. I mean, I really enjoy it. I get on with all the vendors pretty well. You kind of build up a relationship with them, and they're just like anybody else. People have problems in the same way you might get to know someone and their issues a bit more than you would do in any other line of work. But really, I mean, the only thing I can say is that they're just like anybody else, and it's enjoyable.
And you must see so many people move on from that. You'll have seen people at the step where they've started to sell, and then they're selling, and then you see them move on to the next phase in their life. That must be really great.
Yeah, well, I know in this week's magazine there's features about vendors that have done just that, so people that have moved into full-time employment. So, I mean, that's great. That's kind of what we're there for. That's the ultimate outcome, really. And obviously that's not necessarily going to be the case for everybody, because people have different and complex needs. We deal with people with drug and alcohol issues, with a history of illegal activities, people who've been in prison, and these are things that can be difficult to overcome to then get into full-time employment. So we do our best. That is the ultimate goal, that someone will move on into full-time employment. But and when that happens, it's fantastic to it's fantastic to see.
Where do you feel that homelessness is on the political agenda or the national agenda today?
I think homelessness, well, I know homelessness has been on the rise over the last few years, and that's both rough sleeping and the more hidden forms of homelessness, so sofa surfing, people staying in hostels and so on. There's simply no question that is on the rise. Homelessness is part of a broader spectrum of the whole housing issue. And the simple fact is, in Britain, we don't build enough houses. There's lots of attempts to tackle the housing market by encouraging, for example, right to buy and various schemes, but none are changing planning laws and so on. But there is no direct attempt, it would seem, to do the most obvious solution, which is build more affordable housing.
And it's just come to mind right now. It's been on the news about the building which has been purchased by Gary Neville and I forget the other footballer. Ryan Giggs, that's right. So you know the story. They have a building which they're going to be changing into this luxury hotel spa type place, and I believe they've given permission to a number of homeless people to stay there over the winter. Do you feel that something like this, a gesture like this, is important?
I think that gesture is really important. Yeah, the normal default reaction when any form of squatting happens is for the developer or the owner to move as quickly as possible and to get the people out, and that what had happened to them previously on the building in Charlotte Street, which is why they took refuge in the stock building. So it's a massive gesture, it would seem, on the face of it. We've only known really what's happened from the reports that have been elsewhere in the paper. We're actually trying to pursue the story to some degree at the minute. So hopefully there'll be more in the pages of Big Issue North to come. But it would seem on the surface that this is a very laudable thing that those two footballers have done, ex-footballers.
I think one of the things that really impressed me was the fact that it's put homelessness back on the front page. That, you know, it's still there, it's still happening. And, you know, and the fact that they're having to stay somewhere in the city centre, I'm hoping it's opening the eyes of locals to the fact that we need to be doing something about this and pushing our MPs and our councillors to do something.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think anything that can put homelessness on the agenda is obviously positive, because it's like Kevin said, it's been on the rise for the last few years. So stories like this are great. I mean, it's not a solution to the problem, but it is fantastic. It gets people talking about homelessness and people sort of examining what they can do to assist, whether that's writing to MPs or, you know, if you're in a position of, you know, a footballer that owns a development like that, you can let people stay in it, which is great.
Great stuff. Now, I'm sure we've got listeners who will be thinking, how can we get involved with the big issue? Especially, I think, if you're somebody who hasn't got the issue of homelessness, but you're thinking that I want to contribute to making a positive difference, how can our listeners get involved?
Yeah, well, I mean, first thing would be to purchase a magazine. You know, engage with a local vendor, speak to them. You know, it can be a really big part of a community, and that's kind of really good for people to get to know each other. We also have a charitable arm, which is a Big Issue in the North Trust. People can donate to that, which funds the costs of like staff wages and different projects that we might put on to assist vendors, whether that's like back to work programs or any kind of educational or training that they might need. And then also, you know, people can volunteer if they've got any expertise that they think would be useful to vendors. They can get in touch with the Manchester office and give you the telephone numbers 0161 831 5550. We're always looking for people to get involved in any way they can.
I'd like to say a huge thank you again to Kevin and Josh for coming in from the Big Issue to talk about homelessness and the Big Issue itself. You know, it's amazing, I think, the work that you're doing, guys. And as the footballers have done just recently, put it back on the front page. But you guys are the guys who are working behind the scenes, working away, trying really hard to make things better for those who are homeless. And I say, long may your hard work continue.
It's very kind.
Thank you.
So we look forward to having you guys come back in again. If you've got anything happening in the future, you're most welcome.
Thank you very
Brilliant.
much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Indeed.
You've been listening to Awaz Community Radio with Syra. If you'd like to get in touch with us, if you want to know anything else about the big issue itself or about homelessness, come and chat to us on Facebook. It's just typing in Awaz Community Radio. You can tweet us at awazradio122. Give us an email. It's awazcommunityradio@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Look forward to your feedback.